The other way around.
Nice.
Hello and welcome back to the GamesIndustry.biz Investment Summit sponsored by Xsolar. Our next session is a panel, How to Get Your Game Funded, with some fantastic games industry guests. Remember, if you want to ask any questions at all, please do so in the chat area of YouTube. I'll be monitoring that and I'll come back in at the end with some questions. I'll now hand you over to the host of the panel from GamesIndustry.biz, Matt Handrahan.
Thanks, Jamie. As Jamie said, I'm Matt Handrahan. I'm the editor-in-chief of GamesIndustry.biz. I'd just like to echo his sentiments that it's really great to see so many people coming together. It's a really weird, unusual time, as much for us as it is for everyone in the industry. And it's just very important that we keep all of these vital business functions going, I think, and to have so many people coming together and supporting each other and connecting is heartening to see. In this panel, we followed up a few more kind of specific topics here, but we're going to go very broad on this one. This is fundamentally tackling the problem of how to get your game funded, which I think is pretty much the most important part of making a game. Talent is one thing, tools are another thing. They're all very important, but you do really need the financial backing to make that a reality. With that in mind, I mean, we're going to take questions in the YouTube chat. So if you do want to ask anyone here a question, please do get involved there, because this has got some great insight that you can access here. And it's rare to have that, particularly these days. But yeah, so I'll do some brief introductions. We have with us Mitsuo Hirakawa from the Irregular Corporation. I don't know exactly where everyone's appearing on the screens at home, so I'm not going to embarrass myself like that. Roberto Luca from Bossa Studios and Steve Isles from Simvan Capital. What I'd like to do, though, is if each of you could give an introduction to yourself. The investment landscape is very broad. It's quite diverse. I think it's really important that everybody understands which little part of that you occupy. So maybe, Roberta, we start with you. If you could give your own kind of personal introduction and say which part of that landscape you see yourself in.
Yeah, so hi everyone. I'm co-founder of Bossa Studios, and Bossa has been a developer and publisher company for the last, we founded the company 10 years ago. We're going to have our 10th year anniversary this year. We're now about 90 people, mostly based in London, but now, based working from home. We have raised millions in investment, over 30 million over the years. We have really good, incredible investors on our board, including Atomico, London Venture Partners, Makers Fund, and NetEase. We went up to Series B, which we announced last year. And we are very, very well known for creating these games that become super viral and all of the influencers love. Including Surgeon Simulator, I Am Bread, lately I Am Fish, Pigeon Simulator, and so on. So yeah, my take, I don't know if you want me to kind of have my take on how the funding kind of environment is at the moment. But
well, I mean, I think we'll get to, I think maybe that'd be a really good way to close, actually, because I think we'll give people as much like practical knowledge as we possibly can, and then I think we'll like root it in the now right at the very end. But Mitsuo, would you like to tell people a little bit about what you're doing over at the Irregular Corporation?
Yeah. So hi everyone, hi internet. My name is Mitsu. I work at the Irregular Corporation. I head up the biz dev efforts there. So you could consider us to be a typical games publisher. We're based in the UK. We're actually the publishing wing of the Tonix Games Group. So it includes we have multiple studios, including Mediatonic and Fortitude and other studios around the world. So within the publishing side, we've got about 20 to 25 people focusing specifically on indie publishing. And obviously, we're considered to be a full service publisher in that we do much more than just funding and typical traditional publishing services. So because we have a fairly big development, we have over like 250 people right now. So we're able to offer, development support as well as publishing support. And we primarily focus on simulation and management tycoon games and some strategy games, mostly on PC and consoles. So, that's the kind of area we want to operate in, and we're probably most known for a game called PC Building Simulator, which obviously started off as a solo passion project via one 17-year-old developer, but now it's grown into a very successful franchise. So yeah, I'm always there trying to attend events and these online events to meet new developers, and yeah, it's really great to be invited here today.
Yeah, and Steve, how about you? Can you tell people a little bit about what you do at SimVen?
Sure. So, hi, my name's Steve Isles. I've been in industry 25 plus years, delivered probably over 40 products across many different formats. I'm currently a fund manager with SimVen Capital here in London. We are a multi-award winning fund manager specializing in the technology industries, and we have multiple SEIS and EIS funds currently deployed. And we're currently looking at the game space quite aggressively, in fact. I also am managing partner of Origin Venture Partners, and we are a consultancy and advisory service to the games industry, media and tech industries. Okay.
Well, I'd like to start quite basic, actually. I think a lot of people watching this, they're going to have a studio or a company, and they're going to be working on a product. And what I was wondering was, how should they appraise their own needs? I mean, there are different kinds of funding. You have public sources of funding, you have project-based sources of funding, you have more like along the VC lines. How should people look at what they have? How should a developer look at what they have in terms of the studio and the games they make and understand where they need to go? Anyone?
I think the first thing that you have to think about, which I have a YouTube channel and I share a lot of stories of war stories, successes and failures of my career as a serial entrepreneur. And one of the things that I talk about that there, and also with the people that I invest in, etc., is that you have to be very well aligned with your values and what do you want as a business, right? If you want to build a lifestyle business, which is something that it's a small studio with a passion project that you actually want to take it further and take everything on your own terms and grow slowly, however you want to grow, is one route, right? If you want to say, no, actually, I want to be attuned in the market, I want to be a high growth type of company, which a lot of the current technology companies are, that's a different positioning. And then that's a totally different way for you to raise money and to engage with the right investors. And then if you want to go high growth, which is what Bossa have been doing, I think you have to engage with the right angel investors who know a lot about your environment or have some expertise to kind of lend to you, and then start building your connections with with seed rounds and seed VCs and Series A and so on. But primarily for me is that what I see a lot of entrepreneurs that I talk to from either advising or from an angel investing perspective is that they're not very sure which route they want to take, and I think that's a crucial decision they need to make early on.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I would completely support what you've just said, Roberta, because until you've actually solidified what your vision is, you are unable to then go out and focus on what type of investor you're going to basically pitch to. So if it's just project related, if you're only looking at that one project, then you are looking at friends and family, you are looking at Kickstarter, you are looking at fig.co, etc. If you're wanting to build a business for the long term, then us at SimVen, we're not the right company for you. We can't do project-based financing. We are specifically focused with SEIS and EIS funds on building businesses, and that's what the guys at LVP do, and most VCs will do. So you first and foremost need to figure out what are you building, and then how are you going to build that, and then what investment networks you're then going to start talking to.
Yeah. So Mitsuo, a regular, I mean, you introduced yourself there, like you're interested in a very specific kind of game. Does that influence what kind of pitches you want to see? Is that something the developers should take into account when they think about even who to approach, let alone what kind of funding they need?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously every you know, there's a lot of publishers, you know, I'm speaking on behalf of a publisher, and there's a lot of publishers with different flavors, different services on offer. Some are very hands-off, some are very hands-on. You know, there's lots of extremes, lots of players in the middle. And even within, you know, publishers, you know, they have different flavors of games that they like to invest in. Some are more aggressive with mobile, some are free to play. You know, like Irregular, you know, we focus on PC and console games, specifically on simulation and management strategy games, you know. So, you know, in a way, you know, we receive about, well, we review about 300 to 400 pitches every month, and 99% of them would, you know, it's easy for me to kind of decline because it simply doesn't fit with our, you know, with our remit. So I think as a developer, it's worth finding out what, whether it's investors or whether it's publishers, what they're all about, what they're looking for, whether it's budget size, the platforms they operate in the genres. They're all completely different. So there's literally no point, you know, trying to pitch a PS4 game to a mobile publisher, right? So I think it's definitely worth doing some research before approaching these publishers.
Yeah. So there's a, you know, it's about knowing yourself, knowing your product, and also knowing the market as well, knowing who's out there, knowing what they're interested in. But it does make me wonder. We've talked about, you know, the importance of the company values, like your long-term vision. How important is the product itself to that process of getting funding? Do you need to have a product to show at a certain state to improve your chances, or can you just, or is having a strong enough company identity and track record enough in most cases to interest people?
I think that's a help, but it's definitely more useful when you're pitching for investment, you know, to get a particular product off the ground, that you've got at least a vertical slice playable. So that you've got something to show, you've got, you know, that vision on screen, and it also shows that you've got skin in the game, and that's something that you've probably heard, you know, a million times from different investors. Show that you've actually got passion for this product, and you believe in this product, and you've actually risked something to get it to a stage to then put it in front of us.
Sure. And is that how it is at Irregular, Mitsuo? You want to see something that you can really engage with as like a proof of the ability, the vision?
Yeah, I mean, it helps, but probably about a quarter or a third of our projects we sign, we don't actually, you know, we sign without a working prototype, because it's a little bit of a catch-22. You know, developers need money to make prototype, blah blah blah, you know. So it's a vicious circle that they can't get out of, because not all developers can get funding from local governments or rich uncles. You know, it just doesn't happen. So we do accept pitches without prototypes, but they need to have overriding reasons why we should invest in the team. So for example, they have a successful first game out, so they're making a sequel, so there's less risk for us to do that. For example, they may have a really, really big community following already on whether it's Twitter or Discord or, you know, wherever. So there needs to be overriding reasons for them not having a demo. But again, some publishers, it's a requirement, but for some publishers, it isn't. So again, it's also worth finding out from each publisher and, you know, investors in what their requirements are.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's from as an angel investor, I have been investing for the last year and a half, and of course my checks are different to VCs, right, and different stages. For me, it's the way that I look at teams. It's speed, drive, awareness of the market. So as a marketer myself, I kind of see sometimes a lot of entrepreneurs, and not only in the games industry, but across the board in technology, right? That they're so focused on creating the product. And I usually use an analogy that is like they're focused on creating the boat and the sail, but they're not paying attention to the wind. And you have to know where the wind is going so that you can adjust your sail to the right wind to go faster. Yeah. And I see that, I think beyond having a product ready or not, it's about demonstrating that you have full awareness of where the market is going, how you position about that, and of course your capabilities as an entrepreneur to make that happen.
Yeah, sure. Well, so I want to chuck in a question from the YouTube chat right now, because I think it sort of ties to that a little bit. This is from Matt Hall. He says, having a track record is important, but how much or how little will that make or break an opportunity? For the projects that you sign, do you have an idea of how many games or projects they've finished in general? I think this ties to this idea of proving your kind of your values as a business and your standing as a business. So yeah, does anyone have a response for Matt there?
Oh, so I think obviously you know, as part of due diligence, whether you know angels, VCs, or publisher, you know, due diligence checks need to take place, and part of that is the team's, you know, I call it deliverability, and proof of, you know, having a game published in the past goes a long way in proving that. But me personally, you know, we have signed games, you know, when it was one of the first games for a new developer with no track record, you know, but sometimes, you know, it's not just a track record, you know, it's a collection of lots of other factors to give us a coherent overview of the deliverability of a team, where, you know, and surprisingly, you know, passion is very infectious, you know, especially when being pitched face to face rather than over Skype and stuff. But certainly, you know, a team with published track record, good Metacritic, good positive feedbacks, and how they manage community, etc., etc. Those are very positive things, especially for me.
So obviously, I think we've drawn on this paradox already. How, you know, you need money to make a game, but you also might need a game to get some money. Would you advise people taking that money if they're unsure about the terms on which it's being given to them? There's a lot of people making games. It's a very crowded marketplace. I think for a lot of developers, there might be a sense, if I say no to this money, someone else is going to be given it. And where does my next lot go? Where does my next thing go? Where does my funding come from? Do you think it's worth taking on investment funding when you're kind of unsure about what that will entail in the future?
I would say never take the investment funding unless you are completely aligned with the investor, no matter who they are, VC or angel, because inevitably it will end badly down the line. Nobody wins in that case. So yeah, just don't do it. Sit out and wait for the right deal, no matter how painful, because yeah, the pain that you will experience with a bad deal far outweighs the pain that you might be going through just trying to find that right deal.
I think to put things in perspective here is that as an entrepreneur, I empathize with that. It's really, really tough, right? You are in the middle of something, there's money there, and you're like, oh my God, I just need to take that and then take my dream forward, right? But at the same time, it's like you have to think long term, and you have to think that it's a 5 to 10 year partnership. And you want to have the right people on your board long term. You want to have the people who you connect and they align, as Steve was saying, is like you align on the values, but also that they will be able to help you on that journey, right? Mm-hmm. And it's been proven over and over again that having the right investors on board in the beginning and having a really good functioning board makes it easier for you to raise your Series A, Series B. You know, you end up attracting the right people over a long period of time. So starting with the wrong foot, I would not suggest that's a good idea.
I think you know, I think what I'm guessing is that rather than take money on those wrong terms, you're probably better off in really kind of working on nailing down your values and your vision and becoming better at communicating that. And then you'll be more in a better position to get money on the right terms. But I did want to nail down that idea of values. We've talked about it a few times, your values aligning with an investor. As investors, as people that are actually handing out money to developers, what are the values you really value the most? You know, what do you want to see from people? What does that actually mean in practical terms for the people watching?
I think that they've got a solid and good work ethic, that they've built process. That's not typically a value, but it's of paramount importance that you've got the process be it development, be it your management processes, your sales processes, all in line. So it makes it that much easier for you to be able to understand that their goals are of the prospective investee company are long term. From our perspective, and as Roberta has said, we are investing long term. We're not investing just on that one project. But a lot of those points that I just said actually do then still go into a single project investment.
Yeah.
Yeah, from my perspective as an angel, is for me is there are three things that are crucial, right? One is the balance of product and market awareness. And it's like and product, of course, the game, right? So it's like don't make a game in a bubble, because you're just going to be another, one of those 400 pitches that a regular corporation receives, right? And suddenly you're going to be the 99% is not going to be funded because you're just building another thing that is just more of the same. So don't focus only on the product, but having that ability to look at the market and the product, I think that's very crucial for me. The second thing is speed, and speed of iteration and learning as you go. Like there's no reason nowadays that you wouldn't be able to go, fast, especially if you are like a 3 to 4 people team in the beginning. It's like communication is so neat and everything. There's no reason why you shouldn't go as fast as you can and iterate by learning from the players, how the players are, receiving your game. And the third thing, which was mentioned before, is like passion is contagious, right? And someone who's got that vision and like say, okay, this is how I see my company creating huge value to the world in 5 to 10 years time. It's beautiful. It is. You want to be part of that as an investor.
Yeah. So I wanted to highlight one thing Roberta just said and just get your feelings on it, Mitsuo. Obviously, as a publisher, you'd be looking to help bring a product to market. Do you still want to see that market awareness, that understanding of how the product will be sold in the people that you work with?
Yes, I mean, it's nice to have, but I do find that a lot of indie projects that come to us are basically passion projects that people have been working on the side, after their day jobs and stuff. So it is their whole world, and in a kind of cheesy way, we're in the business of turning their dreams come true, right, and bringing them to market. And I think good publishers should be able to advise the developer and inject some sense of reality into the marketability, how you position the game, who are targeting, and all that kind of stuff should be advised. So a good publisher or investor should be able to add those reality checks along the way, because obviously in often cases these games are perfect in developers' mind. It's perfect, and I find that good developers are able to take advice from people with business intelligence and market research reports and mock reviews and things like that. They're able to absorb all of that and actually make better decisions when they kind of make tweaks along the way. But like I say, I've certainly not met a developer who were so clued up about everything, because it's always changing. Like we've seen with right now, there's a lot of noise around cloud gaming, streaming, all that kind of stuff. That's all new to all of us, and and we can't all be aware of everything. But I think that's where good partnerships would yield positive decision making along the way. But yeah, it's definitely nice to have. And when people send me pitches, I definitely like to see who their competitors are and how their games are better or feels fresh. I think it's really difficult. I think it's pretty lame for anyone to say, oh, your game isn't unique enough. It's such a lame excuse for declining, but it's genuinely because it's generally difficult to create something genuinely unique, and unique tends to usually mean pretty niche and pretty risky. So investment can be pretty rare in those unique cases. But what I do ask is, games got to be fun. It's got to feel different enough that it's marketable, So yeah, I mean, we try to be very, very practical with our advice. and not ask for something impossible like, oh, it's not a unique concept, so we're going to decline. But rather, what do you want to be good at? Are you going to be, who's your genre leader? Have a must-have feature? What is it that you've got that we can help promote the game? And hopefully that would, ease out some, better ideas from the developer themselves.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I think that,
just to add one thing, he touched on something very important about the strength, right? Knowing what you're good at, and now I'm kind of changing my head here as an entrepreneur, right? It's like that really truly helped Bossa to establish ourselves as a company that that attracted really good investors, because that reflection has been always on our DNA since the beginning. We always like, but what we're really good at, what is it really that we believe in the world that we can position our games and ourselves as a company, right, in a much better way. I think that's a very, very good point raised.
Yeah, and I think it speaks again to that knowledge of who you are, what you want to do, your vision for your own company, and having that set. Like, don't see yourself as being adrift in this kind of massively complicated place. I mean, I think we're actually running, well, time is trickling away. So I wanted to get into some of the nitty gritty of the pitch. There's a few parts we could touch on here, but I think I'd just like to start with a very broad question, which actually was suggested by Mitsuo. So he's going to be the one who has to answer it first. Why do most pitches get rejected? What are the things that happen? What are the things that you see that most puts you off when it comes to a pitch?
Well, the 99%, in my case, it's not the right types of games that we're looking to invest or publish. That's the first thing, and even if it is within the genre that, we are interested in, and for me, it's a combination of, factors that there's nothing that stands out for me, whether it's the visuals or the narrative arc, or whether it's the systemic ideas or game design. There's nothing that stands out. For me, those are the kind of easy filters to kind of get through most of the pitches very quickly, because if I can't understand what the key selling points or what the strength of the game is by reading the PowerPoint in 5 minutes, then there's no real hope for me into kind of like digging further. So yeah.
Steve, anything you'd like to add?
Well, beyond the repeating what's just been said, I would say on other points, you haven't got within the investment pitch, you haven't got the market awareness, you haven't got a strong enough team, for example. Your numbers don't make sense. You haven't thought through all the risks, and the big one that most people get wrong is discoverability. How are you going to be seen outside of that crowd? That is the major bomb within any presentation, I think, for me, because if you haven't got a publisher on board, and getting a publisher is not an easy process, then you are self-publishing. And then discoverability is even harder. So how are you going to fund that discoverability? Because most are pitching just to get a product to a certain level, either to get it out of the door or to get it to a point where they need follow-on funding. But true discoverability, marketing, etc., is hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars to even have any chance of being seen.
Roberta, you anything to add to those, or is that pretty much along what you would say anyway?
Yeah, it's along what I even mentioned before. Is like, for me, is I don't look at investments that in companies that would not have some sort of a market sense embedded into the thinking of the product. And that goes for games companies that I invested, and also technology companies, right? I lean towards entrepreneurs who have a little bit more balanced awareness, or have founding teams that would have the balance of development and publishing in the team. The ones that are mostly just development, I tend not to be interested from my point of view.
Yeah, I'd like to actually go to the chat because I want us to kind of finish on a little bit of recognition of the time we're actually going through right now. The reason why we're not all sitting in a room in London somewhere. So just from the Dogo Dash asks, what happens if it's your first game and you don't have any track record? No Metacritic, nothing.
So for me, so you know, it's a lot of publishers will shy away from you know, new startups, and that's rightly understandable. But for me, design of the game, the concept is king, and a lot of you know, publishers with resources, you know, can help to formalize the design, help with development, and like we have done. So on PC Building Simulator, you know, the demo was released by a 17-year-old, first game in the market, and we ended up adding 15 developers and just under like 6 or 7 publishing staff to help the developer, you know, dream come true and help with licensing agreements and all that kind of stuff. So if the concept is there, it's if there is you know, if it is a marketable product, if we see something at the end of the tunnel, then you know, a good publisher or investor should be able to facilitate making that happen.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's tough, right? If you don't have the connections to build from scratch, it's like you have to hustle much harder than everybody else. And probably even worse right now because you don't have the kind of the face-to-face connection, right? I would recommend people to read an article that Tara Reddy from Love Shark wrote recently in GamesIndustry.biz, which it was, you know, her first company starting from scratch, and she, you know, hustled super hard to get the right investors on board, and, you know, and angel investors and stuff. So I would start by reading that because there's a lot of very good suggestions there for someone who's just starting. The other thing that I would say is that you could, well, two different routes. You could start engaging with the market in a different way by contacting some micro influencers and saying, hey guys, do you want to play my game? And then you start having some numbers. And then once you go and knock on the doors of investors and VCs, it's like, hey, all of these, you know, 20 guys, micro influencers on YouTube or streamers are playing my game. So there's something there that I might be onto something, right? So that kind of is a proof point in terms of the credibility of the game that they're creating. So that could be another route.
Yeah, your track record is somewhat in your own hands anyway. So you can create some of the impression of knowing what you're doing, even if you've never had a publishing deal before. I mean, I suppose, Steve, that kind of complete absence of any track record, would that make them incompatible with you, for example?
Not really. Not if it was a really strong and passionate team, you know, and a great product that actually had, you know, a good market fit, which we could project out. Okay, this is going to be ready in 12 months. What do we project the market to be like in 12 months? And does this fit? Can we add value is a major thing. Can we support them? Have we got the capacity to support them? Has any of our network got the capacity to support this new team? If all of those are yes, then there's a definite possibility there. I mean, what Roberta is saying about hustle, it's all about the hustle. When I first started out in this industry, I knew a handful of people. I was in Somerset. I moved to London. I started working with Virgin back in the day. I very luckily got to meet a lot of major publishers that were selling their product, obviously, into Virgin Retail, and they would then introduce me to people. But it's all about that hustle, getting to the right people, asking the right questions. And in this market, it's more important than ever. You know, if your route to market is I want to get a publisher, identify who within the publishing community are doing the type of products you want to make, and then go and speak to the biz dev guys and find out what are they looking for, what is their criteria, you know, what is their publishing plan over the next 12 to 24 months. So even if you've got something which is, you know, is really great, they may not want to publish it because there might be a conflict of interest or similar product coming up within their pipeline within the next 12 to 24 months. That's an incredible amount of work you really need to do if you want to be successful.
Yeah, I think one thing, you know, certainly, as Steve mentioned, there's a lot of eyes on websites like, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Twitter, Reddit. There's a lot of biz dev guys scouring through the net for the next big thing, right? I spend a lot of time, maybe too much time on the internet looking for things. And even if, the team didn't have a track record, it's a lot simpler now to get awareness through crowdfunding and using that as a PR campaign. That in itself, for me, is proof that there's some traction there. So, if you set a goal for funding and say it was you met your target within 5 days, or in olden days it was Steam green light. For me, those are validation that there's something there. It's not just my opinion. 1,000 people pledged X amount of money very, very quickly. So I think there's definitely things you can do now more than ever without necessarily having the industry contact as well.
Yeah, sure. So I'd like to draw another question. So just to say, the article Roberta mentioned, I just dropped the link to that in the chat. So everyone should read it. Love Sharks, Tara Reddy. Great advice for anybody wrestling with these ideas at the moment. Question from Tim Gerritsen, which provides an excellent segue into talking about the current pandemic. So thanks for that, Tim. Since face-to-face meetings are not possible currently, do you have any recommendations for making your game stand out in a video conference pitch? I can only assume that you've been doing a few video conference pitches yourselves. So what are your recommendations there? Without that face-to-face element, is there anything specific people can think about or address?
Roberta?
It's a great one. Yeah, do a YouTube channel so you know how to deal with the camera. No, don't do that. It's really hard.
Has it just made this whole process much harder? I mean, from the kind of the hesitation in responding to that, I'm just getting that it's actually, there are some issues with it that are just difficult to solve. That's what I'm getting.
Yeah, I was talking to, so on the last couple of weeks, I talked to probably about three different entrepreneurs who were kind of pitching to me, like sharing deck and etc. Right? And I was very, well, firstly, the conversation took longer because it takes a little bit longer for you to build rapport, right? To kind of know each other and to go into the right rhythm of conversation. So don't do like a half an hour pitch, because it might be that you're not going to get your message across. Book a full hour and etc. So that would be my recommendation. Also, the pitch deck is ever more important. Because you're going to create the report with the video, and then you're going to have the deck that you're going to be looking together, right? And so a deck that is very simple, that makes you pay attention to what the person is saying while you're seeing a few words or keywords or numbers on the screen, I think it really helps to get the message across. I think that these are the two things that I learned with the last conversations that I had that were online.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with Roberta on that front. I think the pitch material is even more important now than ever, because a lot of times you're literally sending files, PowerPoint and a video, and hoping that somebody would get back to them. So being really, really clear on what the game is and what the key strengths are the really, really big thing for me. And if I can't really comprehend what that is, if that's not coming through by spending a few minutes on a PowerPoint, then there's less motivation for me to kind of dig further on it.
Yeah, I suppose it's a matter of thinking about what would normally be coming through in person if you actually had the ability to meet someone in person, and making sure it's represented in that other format rather than relying on those two things being side by side. I mean, I'd just like to kind of finish with a little bit of discussion about just the landscape of all this at the moment, because obviously we're all in lockdown, we're all separated. That isn't going to last forever, or hopefully for too much longer. But obviously there's the specter of a recession on the way. How do you think, how much of a lasting effect do you think this is going to have on the investment landscape, on people looking for investment to fund their projects?
Well, I think we have seen a massive dip in, the VCs, etc., investing, because the landscape is so uncertain. And I've had several conversations over the last few months with regards to, where is this all going to end up? What's going to be the long-term economic impact? And time and time again, you'll go back to, well, in the last recessions that we've had, the industry has fared really, really well. And indeed, right now, you're seeing the numbers spike, but there's no way that spike is going to continue. And in fact, many leading, investors over in the States are saying, this recession isn't a recession. We're going into a depression, and it could be a global depression. So back in the 1930s, I think, what did you have? 15 million people in the US unemployed? What have they got now? 40 million people. We've got God knows how many furloughed here in the UK. How many of those may have jobs to go back to once the furlough period ends? Because many of these companies might be right on the edge, and as the UK government scales back the amount of support they're giving, that'll be just too much for a lot of these small companies to bear, and that's it, they're gone. So what that has is a negative impact on the amount of free cash that people have to spend. Where's it going to go? We don't know. None of us have been through this before. So I don't think that we can justifiably point to past data and say, everything's going to be okay. I think the games industry as such will fare what we're going through better than most, for sure. I don't think it's going to be doom and gloom for us in any way. What it potentially will impact is, whereas the spending for people may be, I'm going to buy a game a month, that will then be tailed back to, I'll buy a game every 2 months, or I'll buy a game every 3 months. And that will then, I think, start hurting maybe the indie developers more, because people will be saving their money for the big ticket items. And in fact, data just released a week ago, which supported the spike in game sales. The top 20 are all big brand games. There's no indie games in there at all.
Yeah. I mean, so Roberta and Mitchell, I guess, as people putting games out there at the moment, it's widely reported that a lot of people have seen increased interest and engagement in their products. Is that something that you've seen right now?
Yeah, exactly. So there's I have a little bit more optimistic view of the world at the moment, despite everything. Firstly, we're not going to go back to normal. We're going to create a new normal, right? It's like this is here to stay, right? There's no going back to where we were before. So I think there are a couple of points I wanted to make here. So one is, yes, engagement is much higher. Live events are much higher, much more, things like that we're seeing. But also, if you look at Fortnite, the amount of live events they're doing inside the game is insane, and it's getting much better by on every show that they host there, right? So in the games world, the engagement is getting higher. It doesn't necessarily translate into sales if you don't have the right IP in the market, because the engagement doesn't mean necessarily sales. But also, I think there's another aspect to look at, which is all the research that has been done around the investment and etc. One, from an angel investment perspective, 65 to 70% of angels in the UK are still actively looking for deals at this time of the world. And also, there was a research done by NFX, which is a VC fund in the US, showing all the doom and gloom of how VCs are scared to invest and etc. But then after a couple of weeks, they released a new fund that it's all about fast investing to new companies. So I think the dynamics are going to change dramatically, but I think there is an opportunity for founders and for games developers to look at the world in a different way and say, how can I get all of my knowledge of game design and create a new product that is actually super compatible with the world as it is right now, right? So we're more than capable of doing those kind of things, more than people who just work in technology. So if you look at Clubhouse, I don't know if you've guys seen Clubhouse recently, that got like 10, 12 million investment from Andreessen at 100 million valuation. It's a new social network that is audio based. So that I could see a game developer creating something like that is totally connected to the times that we're living.
Yeah. So opportunity from crisis is often the way. I think we might have time for you to get the last word in here, Mitsuo, if you like. But
Yeah,
make it a positive one if you possibly can.
Yeah, I have a fairly, positive outlook of the game industry. Obviously, this pandemic has affected, the travels, and I think from BizDev front, it was about a month of, void where nothing really happened. But I think everyone's got back in swing of things. But I think, new technologies, new players like Stadia, Amazon Streaming, xCloud, Arcade, all those are kind of starting to reinvigorate the market in general, picking up new players, lapsed players. There's a lot of free offers going on. Stadia is offering 2 months free pro subscription and stuff. So I think in general, there's a lot of the barrier of entry into gaming has been lowered for a lot of players. You don't really need a console anymore to play a lot of games as well. So, and from Irregular Corporation's perspective, we're actually increasing our investments. We are actively still looking. Compared to 12 months ago, we are signing more games as ever. So I think gaming is there to stay. And I do take Steve's point about indie games not being in the top sales chart and stuff, but I think there's still good business to be made. But design is king for me still, and as long as a good design games are good, are well designed and positioned well, I think there's definitely still never-ending longevity in gaming.
Yeah, well, I think that probably is all the time we have. I think, good note to end on. I think just knowing who you are, what you're bringing to the table, exactly what you need is always going to be your best bet, even in that more challenging environment. But just like to say thanks for watching, and thanks to the panelists for taking part. It's great stuff.
Brilliant. Thank you, Matt. That's awesome. Thank you to Roberta, Mitsuo, and Steve. That was really interesting and I think useful for everyone watching. We'll be back at 1:30 with a talk by Robert Lowe from Lego Ventures, and you can find the link to that session on investmentsummit.gamesindustry.biz. So thanks everyone, and see you soon.